Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's doing great. Going to do a video today on something incredibly interesting. I have been posting that I ended up buying a old New Testament apocryphal Bible. I wanted to kind of get back to some other teachings that essentially the academic world or the church world would tell us is not canon or not, it's not real, it's not right, it's forged, etc. And, as we understand, everything that we've ever been taught and told is a lie. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go on eBay and I'm going to see if I can find an old Bible. And of course, there's lots of old Bibles on there. Some are very expensive and some are not expensive at all. This Bible here cost me $30. A lot of the times these people don't even know what they're getting rid of. They have no understanding, of course. And, I thought this Bible was in 1857, and yesterday going through it, got a good call with Joshua. We were talking for a few hours and kind of going through this, and we ended up finding out, going through looking at this, it's actually an 1817 last London edition of this Bible. It is absolutely incredible. I was asking Linda, who posted on this channel as well, what books she had in hers that she had. I think she had in 1876, and I think she had what I already understood to be what they would classify as apocryphal with the Maccabees and whatnot. So I knew that one, but I didn't know this one. There is books in here that I've never heard of, and I'm going to share some of those with you today. I have also purchased another Bible from eBay. It's a rare old German 1800s Bible from Holland, and it's going to be here near the end of the month, and I'm very interested to see what that's about. It had some very interesting images that I'm going to take a closer look at to continue to find more and more understanding. We have to find out our history as much as we can to determine, to kind of get some understanding of where we're at. And I played with that a little bit in my post, where in this book it gives you kind of a timeline, and I went through that timeline, which I find very fascinating. And one thing I didn't mention in that was if you actually take the time of the time of Adam all the way to the incarnation of Christ, in this book it says it was something around 4,967 years or something like that. And what I said in my post was, well, if Christ died 33 years later, I added 33 and then I added 2,024 on it, and that gave me 7,021 years. But what I failed to mention, and I should have mentioned this, is that if you actually take just the time of Christ's incarnation, Christ's birth, which was the 4,967, I believe it was. Don't quote me. You'll have to go and look at the post to be sure. I'm just kind of going off a few things I'd like to mention. And you add 2,024 years that we're told that we're living in, you come up to 6,988 years, which is fascinating to me because you're 12 years short of the 7,000. And in one of the books that I'm going to be talking about today, it talks about the unveiling or giving the secret of the 7 days, and how it says in the book of Barnabas here that I have that in 6,000 years, in the 7,000th year, all things will come to an end. Which we all understand, and we don't know where we are, if we're in Satan's little season or whatnot. But I shared the page with Joshua. He was very interested in it because it talks about the season of Satan, which I'm sure he'll have something to say about that. I'm not going to talk much on that today. But it's very fascinating to me when you look at all these things. And also in another book, I'm going to go through them, and we just talk a little bit about this because I think some of you are very curious. But again, $30 on eBay, 1817 edition. And this is a very Catholic, I would say, very Catholicism style a Bible. And of all the books I've read so far, there's only two that I would classify as authentic in regards to our salvation, versus the other ones, which are more of a witchcraft, sorcery type Freemasonry speak with languages and symbols. But the book of Barnabas, which is the Epistle of Barnabas, which is not the same as what you guys have, essentially, because I think there's 21 in the newer one, 21 chapters, but in this one there's only 15, and the words are very, very different. Josh and I were talking about this yesterday. He had a couple editions, and we were going through this line by line. And the one that I have here from 1816, it actually brings out a lot more true meaning with the words. And words mean everything. So I find it very fascinating. And this one only has 15 chapters. But by far, and I'm going to repeat this, by far, the Epistle of Barnabas is probably the greatest book that I've ever personally read. There is so much incredible knowledge in this book, and I am going to tell everyone today, please go out and buy this book if you can, if it's available. You're not going to get the one that I have unless you can go on eBay and find an older one that has it. But I'm telling you, man is without excuse with this epistle. Barnabas, he unveils and tells you the secret understandings or the hidden truths of the Torah in regards to the circumcision, in regards to Isaac, in regards to Abraham, in regards to unclean and clean foods, all of this stuff he gives you. And I was absolutely floored, and I was actually in tears, literally in tears, in a puddle of tears for almost an hour when I was going through this, because it confirmed everything that I've ever taught in regards to the spiritual ends of the Torah, and in particular Leviticus 11. We're going to go through this today and show you how incredible this is. And it's only a confirmation to me that the Spirit has shown me the true understandings of these things. But this was given however many years ago by Barnabas, or the so-called Barnabas, whoever this is. He gave you the secrets and understandings. And those of you that went through my Leviticus series, which is difficult to listen to and difficult to comprehend, you will see when I show you today how the Spirit of God is actually showing us the truth, and that it's not about meats, and it's not about the Sabbaths and the holy days and the appointed times. And in fact, this Barnabas epistle is probably one of the most anti-Semitic epistles ever written. It's quite extraordinary, and I'm not going to get into it too much because I'll let you read it on your own due to censorship and whatnot. But it's clearly incredible. But they get into the true understanding of that it's not about the Judaism. It's not about Jewish law. And in fact, they had no understanding of what Moses was actually telling them. And this is one of the things that I've gotten in the Spirit over the last few years about the understandings of the deeper meanings of the Torah, which again was confirmed, and I was in absolute puddles because of the confirmation from God from this actual book, which is wonderful. So buy this book, the Epistle of Barnabas. Like I said, try to get an old version like I have, or the oldest that you can get, so that you know that the words aren't translated wrong, because we know this book here is absolutely phenomenal. Translations, and those of us that study the Bible, and I said this to Joshua yesterday, those of us that study the Bible, you are without excuse when you read this epistle. You should know and understand the language. This epistle is just as or more authentic than the Bible you read at home. If this is not authentic, then the Bible we read is not authentic. And this is me speaking the truth to you. I've studied the Bible for years upon years, in regards to the understandings of the Torah, which I was stuck in that paradigm, as you understand from my journey. And this is incredible, all Torah, but in the spirit, in the understanding from the beginning, which was all spirit. And I'm only going to touch on one section of this Bible, of this book today, to show you some stuff that's really incredible. But let's take a look. So here you're looking at the front of it. I had to duct tape it right here because the book is completely in shambles. But that's what it looks like. Here is the inner pages. So here's what I have in mind. I have, which is quite fascinating. You can pause this and look at all these at a later time to actually look and see what the books that I have in mind. But I have the Gospel of Mary's Birth, Proto-Evangelion, can't really pronounce that, Infancy of the Gospel of Jesus Christ as a child, Infancy of the second one according to Thomas as a child. I'm not putting a lot into these first four books. It's a lot of witchcraft and sorcery language in there, but also it does give you a lot of truth. It's a lot of Catholic and it's a lot of mother worship, which I understand you have to glean and have all eyes to ears and see and understand. And that's what the true circumcision actually means, is the circumcision of the ears, which is fascinating that Barnabas expounds on that. But again, I don't hold much to those. There's a lot of garbage in there, but there's also some truth and some fascinating things in there as well. Christ and Abagaras, the Book of Nicodemus. I've talked about that. Great books. One of the better books I've read. Some stuff in there that I've never heard of. Deeper accounts of Christ's court crucifixion and aftermath with Joseph of Arimathea. Quite fascinating there. You have the Apostles' Creed in an ancient state. You have the Apostles' Creed in a present state, which I haven't gotten into. You have the book or the epistle or the letter to the Laodiceans. You have Paul and Seneca. I've read this. This is letters going back and forth between Paul and Seneca. And Seneca was one of the higher up servants or whatnot of the emperor at the time. And Paul was writing back and forth to him as Seneca was taking Paul's epistles to the emperor, and they were reading it out loud to them as Paul taught. And what I find interesting as I follow this time frame in this book, and what's wonderful about this Bible, is that the letters are stamped with dates, which is incredible because we all know it's about dates. And these letters are all signed with the day of the month and who was in control in Rome at that time. And what I've kind of did a little bit of math and started to figure stuff out, a lot of the stuff we've been told in the world we live in today is a complete lie. And the timing doesn't add up in terms of who they tell you was in charge and at what time. And it's quite fascinating because the letters are from 58 AD and they end in 64 AD. And the Great Fire of Rome, which happened during Nero's time, it actually happened before 64 AD, according to the letters from Paul back to Seneca. They were talking about this. So quite fascinating. And then what I find interesting about that book also is that the last two letters back and forth were under the consul of Leo and Savanus. And I cannot find Leo and Savanus in the history books as consulars in the Roman Empire. So not sure where that is or what that's about. But apparently Seneca died of committing suicide in 65 AD. And these last two letters that were written both by Paul and and Seneca, there's no time in history that I can find it. But there are dates in terms of it was July 5th and August. Between July 5th and August of the consul of Leo and Savanus. Savanus is Savinus. So if anybody out there has any understanding of where that could be or who these consuls were, that would be great, because we can have more of an understanding of the time frame that these letters were actually supposedly written back and forth to each other. So that was a really interesting book of letters. One thing that Seneca confirmed to my understanding and to what I've been believing as of late is that Paul's writings were in allegory and mystical style. That was exactly what it says in the second last letter from Seneca to Paul, was how impressed he was and how the Roman emperor at the time was so incredibly impressed with Paul's writings because it was all allegorical and mystical style. And I've got into this before, but the allegory and mysticism, it's a lot to do with the mind and the brain, and it has a lot to do with the higher consciousness and a lot to do with the stories of the Old Testament are there for our learning, and some of them are not real in the physical. Quite fascinating. Then you have Paul and Thecla. Don't put much into that. That was very witchcraft and sorcery to me. Apparently Thecla was a virgin that was in love with Paul. And the story is very symbolic in regards to symbols and images. And again, sorcery and witchcraft to me. A lot of Catholicism in there with Mary and nun and virgin worship. And a lot of father being called of Paul. So again, not putting much thought into that. And then we're going to get into 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians. Not written by Paul. Actually written by a guy's name of Ignatius, I believe. I really can't. I have a terrible time pronouncing these guys' names because I'm not very good at really reading pronouncing these people's names. But Ignatius, I believe, is his name, and he wrote those two books. Then you have, I haven't read those yet. Then you have Barnabas, which is by far the best book I've ever read. Then you have Ephesians, which again is not written by Paul. This one here, I haven't read it yet. But this one, again, is written by Ignatius. Then you have the Magnesians, which is, again, not written by Paul. It's written by Ignatius. And then you have Romans, which is, where's Romans? Romans is, again, not written by Paul. It's written by Ignatius. Oh, my apologies. Corinthians 1st and 2nd wasn't written by Ignatius. It was written by Clement. Apologies. Sorry about that. It was written by Clement, which I believe Josh and I were talking yesterday. Clement was one of the guys that was following Paul at the time. I think it's in Philippians that you can read about Clement. But Clement wrote the 1st and 2nd Corinthians according to this Bible. Then we have, so the Magnesians, we have Ignatius writing that, Ignatius writing Romans. Next we have the Philadelphians, which Ignatius wrote to them. Then after that you have the Smyrna, which Ignatius wrote to them, not Paul. Then you have the Epistle of Ignatius to Polycarp. And then you have Polycarp writing an epistle to the Philippians. So again, not Paul, but Polycarp. So quite fascinating. Haven't read any of these books yet. And then you have Hermas, the shepherd of Hermas, who writes the majority of the rest of the book. Which again, I don't know much about him. Apparently he was a follower. So he writes 3 different books in his Bible. So that is essentially what it is. This is kind of what I wanted to talk about today. So very interesting, very cool, as the world would say. And quite intriguing to understand that these are, from 1816, this book was given. And again, they say that if you read it, it's pulled from the first 4 centuries after Christ when you read this little blurb. And then here is just showing how it's completely, it's in very fragile condition. Every time I turn a page, I unfortunately are ripping it. But let's get into the stuff I want to talk about today. So I posted about this the other day. What you're looking at is humorism, and it's talked about this in the book of Barnabas, and it's talked about this in the infancy of Jesus Christ. When they asked Christ when he was 12 years old, when he went to the temple, as we know, and he was in there teaching the scribes and the lawyers, and etc., and that's all it says, and then Mary and Joseph had to come back, and they never found him until 3 days later, etc., etc. This goes into a greater detail of supposedly what was talked about when Christ was 12 years old within the synagogue, in the temple, talking to them during the Passover. There was a lot of different topics that were talked about, and they wanted Christ to explain to them about philosophy, about the creation, and a bunch of other interesting things, and about the body, and about astronomy, and etc. And there's a lot of very good things to take away from that, which I've kind of written down, and I'm going to do a deeper study in, because again, some of the stuff is true, some of the stuff isn't, some of the stuff have deeper allegorical understandings. But one of the things he talked about is the humor, and the humors of the body. Now, if you're like me, and you're, I'm going to be 40 this year, you have no understanding or never ever have been taught anything of this, any such thing of this, okay? And the humors were a tremendous understanding back in the days of apparently Christ and before. And it's the 4 bodily fluids in your body. And the 4 bodily fluids in your body are blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And when these 4 are in harmony, your body is healthy. But when they're out of whack, that's when diseases and physical diseases of the body start happening to your organs and everything, as well as what they call today mental health start to tremendously happen, and etc. But I want you to read this. This is very fascinating because, speaking with Joshua yesterday, this is why you have to believe this stuff more if you have an understanding of deeper revelations. It says humorism, began to fall out of favor in the 17th century, and it was definitely disapproved in the 1850s. Clearly this book talks about it, so it was still in the know at that time, but it was written in 1817. With the advent of germ theory, which was able to show that many diseases previously thought to be humoral were in fact by microbes. So I'm not a believer in the germ theory. I don't believe it at all. That's a whole other discussion in itself. I know Joshua is the same. I don't believe in it at all. I think it all has to do with bacteria, the environment, parasites, etc. But it's very fascinating that all of a sudden when they created this germ theory, that this understanding just essentially went away. But what I want to show you that's very fascinating is these 4 bodily fluids that Christ was talking about, Barnabas talks about in regards to disease of the body and the physical body here, and how the body is the temple. They really go hard about the body being the temple, the physical flesh temple of God in Christ. Very important. You can look at this yourself. This is from Wikipedia. But what I want to talk about is that they were talking about how Christ will redeem the body from the humors in regards to this Bible, because the humors represented the death or the destruction mentally within the brain, and physically with the organs of the body and the blood that made you live and walk and breathe every day. I'm not going to get into this deeply, but it's very fascinating and very true. And I'm going to study this more, this humorism, because it makes a lot of sense to me, because I know I have blood, I know I have yellow bile, I know I have black bile, and I know I have phlegm. And I know that when these things are out of order in my body, I am sick. So there's a lot to be said in understanding of this, and keeping it in a simplistic form. You have to understand this, and you have to understand what causes this dysfunction in the body, okay? But for this purpose and for this video, as I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I would love to do a whole video on this, but listen to what it says about black bile. Black bile was associated with melancholy, whatever you want to call it, which means a state of your mind. Okay, it means your mind and what state it's in, which is in a deep, dark state. Okay, the word itself derives from Greek meaning black bile. Depression was attributed to the excess or unnatural black bile secreted by the spleen. Cancer was also attributed to an excess of black bile concentrated in a specific area. Okay? So you have depression and you have cancer. Oh man, what are we seeing now ever since the abomination has taken over the world? Have we not seen the number of S rates go through the roof, the depression, the pharmacia that are treating the people with suppression and schizo and bi and blah, 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 blah. It is outrageous. And what about cancer? Man, never seen it ever in the history of the world. They're saying now the level of increase in the last 3 years or 2 years has been up thousands of % amount of people that are getting cancer. Black bile. Remember, okay? I've talked about this before. The enemy shows you everything in plain sight to mock you. Okay? It's part of their witchcraft. It's part of their sorcery that they have to show you beforehand so that they can that you can see it, and it creates a greater euphoria or a greater I'm not even going to get into it, but it's like Satan has to show you beforehand of what he's going to do, no different than Christ and God has told you beforehand all things from beginning to end. It's the same thing. He's a mimic. So when you have an understanding of this black bile and you look at the last 4 years, has not the black bile been thrown in your face all day long by movies, videos, celebrities, mocking you? And what am I talking about? I'm talking about black goo. Those have eyes and ears and understanding can understand what I'm talking about here. You'll know what I'm saying. Okay, all the movies that were talking about this, Prometheus and Venom, Justin Timberlake, his new video that he just did, I forget what it's called, something with angels in heaven or something like that, where the demonic angel spills black goo all over him. Black goo, black goo, black goo everywhere in TV shows. It's remarkable when you understand this, okay? Black goo. What are they actually talking about here? Remember? What are we talking about with this black goo coming out of all the people? What were they trying to tell you? What are they trying to tell you and mock you? Okay, what are they doing? Well, do you remember this? I'm not going to say it because I'm sure this will be taken down if I do, but do you remember this? What was this in? We know what this was in, right? We know exactly what this was in. Right? Oh, it's going to highlight it for us. I don't know what this is, but it's going to tell us what this was in. Right? So we understand exactly what they were talking about in terms of disease in the body way back 200 years, 300,000 years ago when they talked about humorism. And they talked about when this thing was out of whack, it created tremendous depression and tremendous cancer. Well, are we not seeing that now more than ever? And do they not do a ritual in front of everybody and mock everybody by showing them all the black goo and what it actually means coming out of the people and blah, 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 blah. The so-called abomination of desolation having this in it, right? Having this in it, right? Which is black goo or black bile, or triggering the black bile with it. I mean, you can't make this up when you have eyes and ears. You can understand how they talk in symbols and languages. Okay, they put it in your face. It's just, unfortunately, people don't believe it. They don't want to believe it, right? Because they're in darkness. They don't understand the world. And you have to understand the world before you can then understand God. All right, you got to understand the world before you can understand God. And the book of Barnabas talks exactly about this, okay? You have to know what the world is and hate every part of it for you then to become a true believer, a true one that's walking with the Creator. Because everything that the Creator has told you in regards to the world, you cannot be part of it. And if you are a hypocrite. You are an absolute hypocrite. Now, we're going to get into my study today, into my video. I did a video a long time ago on Leviticus 11. In Leviticus 11, it talks about what? It talks about clean and unclean foods. And if you remember, if you listen to that video, I told you, and I continue to tell people all the time, it's not about the bacon. Okay, it's not about a bacon sandwich, right? It's not about eating that shrimp, right? It's not about any of that. It's actually talking about people. Okay, this is what Moses was saying that they never understood, because the Jews and the people of the day were physical. They were carnal-minded. Okay, they only took the carnal thought, and they couldn't eat it. But it was for our understanding. All right. So what's fascinating is that I explain and go through all these unclean animals, and I was telling you that it's talking and showing the characters and characteristics of people that you are not supposed to be around, nor are you to partake with, break bread with, communicate with. And on top of that, you are not to be like these animals that they talk about. And of course, people don't want to accept that. They don't want to believe that because it's, well, I can't stop talking to my brother or my sister or my mom or my dad, or I can't stop talking to my friend that goes to church and blah, blah. You are a hypocrite if you believe the word of God and you don't do it. What did Christ say? Christ said that he has been a sacrifice and a salvation to those who obey him. Tells you that in Hebrews. If you are not obeying him, and as he says in Matthew and Mark, I think it is, where you are my friends if you do as I command you. Okay, you got to do it. All right, you got to do his word. And if you're not, he tells you in Hebrews, like I just said, there's no salvation for you. The salvation is only for those that do my words. Okay, that's why he says that those on the left hand saying, Lord, Lord, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, I don't know you, because they didn't do what he said to do. And this is where the hypocrisy comes in. This is why most of the people today that call themselves believers are still hanging around and breaking bread and associating with people that are unclean, okay, that are defiled, that are an abomination. And I'm not talking in a way to be prideful. I'm not talking in a way that I'm on some kind of a higher level here, because I'm not. I'm talking to you as a biblical fact truth, that if you are to be the body of Jesus Christ and the God the Father dwelling in you, and you are the temple of God, and your mind and your heart is always focused on the higher things, the higher mind, the right hemisphere, upper room, how in the world can you be having carnal conversations and being around carnal people, communicating with them who are completely in darkness and carnal and saying unclean and defiled things? They will not dwell in you. It's the same pattern from the beginning. Anytime the temple or the tabernacle was corrupted, the cloud or the smoke or the fire left the tabernacle or the tent or the temple, because he will not dwell with uncleanness. He will not dwell with it. He will not dwell within your mind or in your heart if you are unclean and having unclean thoughts and unclean behaviors. It's very simple, guys. Okay, he's not the author of confusion. We confuse everything. We destroy everything. We put everything in religion. We put everything in oh, it's okay because he didn't really say that and he's love. No, man, it's not. Barnabas even goes on to fact, he continues to push hard and hard. It's all about sin. You shall not sin. All right? Oh, it's about love. No, it's not. It's you shall not sin. Okay? This is a hard word for most, and this is why most are not led by the Spirit of God, don't have the Spirit of God in them, because they're carnal. All right? And they don't understand what they do. They're pretenders. They're fake. All right? This is what it talks about with the 10 virgins, right? The 5 are real. The 5 are fake. Okay? The fake Christian, the fake believer. Yeah, I'm your buddy. I'm your brother. I'm da-ba-ba-ba. But they're unclean and they're defiled. Physically and spiritually. So, not to go on a tangent, but I really want to push this. So we have in chapter 9 of the book of Barnabas, Epistle of Barnabas. We're going to get into what he talks about here, and he starts to unveil the secrets or the deeper understandings of what clean and unclean foods mean. And I'm going to read this entire chapter because it's incredible, and I want you to listen because this is very important to understand. You are without excuse, and I want everybody to go, like I said, please, I pray, I beg you to get this book so that you can have a deeper understanding and you can understand that these things are all spirit. Okay? This is one of many revelations he gives that only confirms what I've been saying from the Spirit of God. Not me, but from what God has been speaking through me. I'm going to go right here in 9. Now listen. But why did Moses say, you shall not eat of the swine, neither the eagle, nor the hawk, nor the crow, nor any fish that has not a scale upon him? I answer that in the spiritual sense, he comprehended 3 doctrines that were to be gathered from. Okay? Besides, he says to them in the book of Deuteronomy, and I will give you my statutes unto this people. Wherefore it is not the command of God that they should not eat these things physically, but Moses in the Spirit spake unto them. So it was a spiritual speaking, not a physical, don't eat that fish or that pig. Okay, this destroys Judaism in a minute. Destroys it. Now, the sow, he forbade them to eat, meaning thus, that thou shalt not, now listen, he's going to give you the interpretation of this. Now the sow he forbade them to eat, meaning thus, thou shalt not join thyself to such persons as are like unto swine, who while they live in pleasure forget their God, but when anyone pinches them, then they know the Lord. As the sow, when she is full, knows not her master, but when she is hungry, she makes a noise, and being again fed, is silent. Do we understand what he just said here? It's very easy to understand what he's talking about here, what the type of person this is. Somebody that, what? Knows not where he's getting the knowledge, right? And forgets and is lazy and is fat and sits back and full, but then when it's hungry, it's going to go and devour everything up and doesn't care, right? These are the people that are so-called in the church. Incredible. Neither says he, shall thou eat the eagle, nor the hawk, nor the kite, nor the crow, that thou shalt, this is what it means, that this is thou shalt not keep company with such a kind of men as know not how their labor and the sweat to get themselves food, but injuriously ravish away the things of others, and watch how to lay snares for them, when at the same time they appear to live in perfect innocence. So these birds alone seek not food for themselves, but sitting idle, seek how they may eat of the flesh which others have provided, being destructive through their wickedness. Wow. What an incredible interpretation to what it means not to eat those unclean birds. Do you understand what that means? Do you understand that this would be all the pastors and priests and bishops and all these people, okay, that are just completely an abomination and take the words and take the truth from other people and try to put it into their own words and gain memberships and gain all these people, and it's in a complete destructive wickedness way. Are you talking to these people? Are you with these people? Are you hanging out with that Christian friend that thinks he's he knows things and he's all, but I mean, this is what you have to understand what he's saying here. Neither says he, shall thou eat the lamprey, which is what you're looking at. I thought this was kind of interesting. Brought these pictures up. The lamprey, nor the polypus. Okay, just giving you a physical understanding of what it looks like. Nor the cuttlefish. Creepy things. That is, thou shalt not be like such men by using to converse with them who are wicked to the end, and a judge to death. For so those fishes are alone accursed, and wallow in the mire, nor swim as other fishes, but tumble in the dirt at the bottom of the deep. Incredible. Are you conversing, communicating, and breaking bread with those that are completely wicked through and through? Are you? Those that are at the bottom or in the deep, essentially in the darkness, in the ground, earthly. Okay? I mean, this is incredible, right? This is confirmation of understanding of what he's talking about and how it has to do with people. Now listen to this one. But he adds, neither shalt thou eat the hare or the rabbit. To what end? To signify this to us. Thou shalt not be an adulterer, nor liken thyself to such persons. For the hare every year multiplies the places of its conception, and as many years as it lives, so many it has. He's talking about a whore, a harlot, man and female whores and harlots and adulterers that go around and sleep and hang out with people and commit adultery with them and fornicate with them, are defiled in the mind, okay, within the heart, spiritually, defiled in a fornicated way. Okay? What an incredible interpretation about a rabbit. Do you know what a rabbit does? Do you know why they call them people rabbits? Because all they want to do is have sex all day long. If you put a rabbit, we have rabbits on our homestead, and you cannot put a male rabbit with a female rabbit. It will kill her if you allow him to continue to try to be with her. You have to separate them after they have intercourse, so that she doesn't be killed, because all he'll do is want to go over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. They conceive and do it all day long, every single day, doesn't matter who it is. Okay? A greater understanding of man and women. Okay? Are you hanging out with these people? Are you talking to these people? Are you being intimate with these people? Are you communicating with these people? Remember, this is physical. What about the spiritual, which is more important? What about a spiritual adulterer? Are you communicating with them? Are you hanging out with them? I mean, guys, I'm not saying this stuff. This is what it's saying in Barnabas, in the Bible, in this epistle, which confirms in Leviticus 11. Okay, and David knew this. And it's going to show you this. But here's the best one. Here's the one that I did a video on and said, where are we at? Remember I did a video, where are we at? Because I was going through this time of saying, are we actually in Satan's little season? Because I don't see this and I don't see that in the Bible and blah, blah, blah. Because all this stuff has been taken from us, or all this stuff's been hidden from us. So, of course, we don't have all the truth. But I remember I put up something about how I don't read the no gender and the transgender in the Bible. I don't read how they were going to prophesize about them, Well, watch this. This is incredible. We're without excuse. No wonder that they didn't allow these teachings to go into the Bible, because it would absolutely, one, end the church, two, end Judaism, and three, people that would have half an understanding of the Bible wouldn't even communicate with anybody other than those that had all things in common. That's an absolute fact because of this epistle. Listen to this. This is absolutely phenomenal. Neither shalt thou eat of the hyena. This is in Leviticus 11 as well. That is again, be not an adulterer, nor a corrupter of others, neither be like to such. And wherefore so? Why? Because the creature, the hyena, every year changes its kind and is sometimes male and sometimes female. Did you hear that? It changes its gender from male to female every year. Now, before I get into the hyena and show you this, which is going to be, I was never taught this stuff in school. I was never shown this in school. I never knew this in school. Well, they failed to teach me this one. Maybe you know it. But do you know what he's talking about here? Is he not talking about this age where today you can be Sally, tomorrow you can be Donnie, and then the next day you can be a kitty cat and they'll give you, your name will be Furry and you'll be able to go pee in a litter box? Is this not what this is saying? Of course it is. It's talking about transgender, non-gender, and all this crap that we're dealing with. This is a female spotted hyena you're looking at. Well, she has a uterus, she has a cervix, she has a vagina, and she also has a clitoris, which is actually, according to science, a pseudo-penis. There's a picture of a female hyena with a male penis. You can't make this up. This is absolutely mind-boggling that we were never taught this. Of course they didn't teach you this. Female spotted hyenas, all female spotted hyenas have functional penises. They use it to pee, signal, anally mount males and females for dominance and give birth. To give birth. So here is the representation of a hyena, which is a man or a woman, who you're not supposed to be partaking with, but are everywhere now and are being pushed now in all the school systems, in all the world, LGBTQRSYZ, whatever you want to call it. It is the spotted hyena. And this has been prophesied 2,000 years ago, that because this creature every year changes its kind, and sometimes it's male and sometimes it's female. Now, can you imagine reading this in 1816? Where, for our understanding, there would have been no transgender or no gender, or 1 year on this, or next day on this, or next day on this. They would not even have a clue what this means. What a revealing. And what a confirmation for the time you're living in. What a confirmation for the time you're living in. That they knew this. Now go into your Bibles and read about hyena. And with this understanding of them being completely abominable, completely deluded of the mind, completely destroyed and abominational people in regards to being male, female, not, running all. Think about all the people. Think about the people that the current president of the United States had in power for different educational systems within the United States of America. He had a couple transgenders, I think, running that. And this is all over the world, no different than where I am in Canada, right? But read now in your Bible when it talks about in Isaiah 13 and Isaiah 34 and Jeremiah 50, which all has to do with the destruction of Babylon. Read what it talks about. Hyenas will inhabit her strongholds, jackals her luxury places. Her time is at hand, and her days will not be prolonged. Okay, the desert creatures will meet with the hyenas, the wild goats, and the bleats, and each other lie down and find themselves a place to rest. It's incredible when you look at, let's just go to one, and it talks about Babylon, which I believe is absolutely America or the American way of life. You have in here, which is, let's do Isaiah 34, I think it is. When he talks about here in Isaiah 34:14, he talks about how the Lord's going to have fury against all their armies and slain. Read this yourself. Okay, and he's talking about Babylon. He's talking about the land of Esau, okay, which is Idumea or whatever. That's actually the land of Esau, which again is to me could be absolutely is America. The sword of the Lord is filled with blood, is made fat with fatness. Okay, again, sacrifice in Esau. This is again meaning Esau. You can check this out yourself. Place in Edom. Okay, and Edom again is talking with the twin brother of Jacob, Esau. All right, and the unicorns shall come down with them, and the bullocks. Okay, again, we understand that this is not talking about physical animals. It's talking about characteristics of people that are running this place. With the bulls in their land, and be soaked with blood, and their dust made fat with fatness. For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance, the year of the recompensances, whatever that word is, for the controversy of Zion. And the streams thereof shall be turned into pitch, and the dust thereof into brimstone. The land therefore shall be burning pitch, and it shall not be quenched day or night, and smoke therefore shall go up from generation to generation, shall lie waste, and none shall pass through it forever. This is, to me, is talking about the end days and talking about the system that we're living in and how it's completely an abomination. It's completely in waste. You got these types of animals running around, running and controlling the government, controlling all the way of life that we live. He's talking about these hyenas and all these different beasts of the field, which is talking about mankind itself. But it says, watch what's important here. When it's talking about Babylon, it says, but the comrade and the bitterin shall possess it. The owl, also the raven shall dwell in it, and shall stretch out forth upon the line of confusion the stones of emptiness. They shall call the nobles thereof the kingdom, but none of them there, and all her princes shall bring nothing. I mean, think about what he's talking about here for the age you're living in. And thorns shall come up in her palaces, nettles and brambles in her fortresses, and it shall be a habitation of dragons, okay, or sea serpents or monsters. A court full of owls, a Bohemian Grove, and all these secret societies that run this place. Understand what he's talking about here in this age we're living in. Wild beasts, which is translated as hyenas, shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island, and the satyr shall cry to his fellow, and the screech owl also shall rest there. Find her rest. This is talking about Babylon, Esau, the land of Esau. Okay, the great owl. All right, all the leaders of the world are part of the Bohemian Grove, which is the great owl. I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but go through it yourself. Okay, when you have a deeper understanding with just Barnabas bringing to light what the unclean and clean animals actually mean, which is what I expounded on a long time ago. Okay, so I find that very interesting. That here we have the old female hyena, which is neither male or female, transgender if you want. It has both parts. Incredible. For which cause also he justly hateth the weasel, to the end they should not be like such persons who with their mouths commit wickedness by reason of their uncleanness, nor join yourselves with those impure women who with their mouths commit wickedness, because that animal conceives with its mouth. Okay, it's talking about, are you around people that have a type of mouth of wickedness, a heart of wickedness, a mind of wickedness, speak perverted and disgraceful things, unclean things? Okay, this is the people he's talking about. Remember, you're living in 2024. Who are my brethren? Who's my sister? Who's my brother? Who am I partaking with? Because everybody that he has explained so far is everybody outside of my property. Moses, therefore, speaking as concerning meats, delivered indeed these 3 great precepts to them in a spiritual signification of those commands. But they, according to the desires of their flesh, understood him as if he had only meant it of meats of food. Isn't that the world? And therefore David took, the knowledge of his threefold command, saying in like manner. Okay? And this is referenced in Psalms 1. It says, "Blessed is the man that hath not walked in the counsel of the ungodly, as the fishes before mentioned in the bottom of the deep in darkness, nor stood in the way of sinners, as they who seem to fear the Lord, but yet sin as the sow." Okay, again, this all comes back to sinning, right? Are you a sinner? Do you dwell with the sinners? "And hath not sat in the seats of the scorners, as those birds who sit and watch that they may devour. Here you have the law concerning meat perfectly set forth, and according to the true knowledge of it." David had the understanding of it, of course, because it tells us that in Psalms. He just repeated what Psalms said. Okay? So obviously David understood the greater spiritual understandings of Moses' word. But says Moses, "You shall eat all that divideth the hoof and cheweth the cud, signifying thereby such a one as having taken his food," which is knowledge of God, "knows him that nourishes him," God gives you it through the Spirit, "and resting upon him rejoices in him." This is what it means, guys. I've said this before. That's what a clean animal is. Understands where the knowledge is coming from. It's given to him through the Spirit, and he gives praises and thanks to God for the knowledge, not man. Not man never gave it to him, but the Spirit of God, and God himself gave it to him. "And in this he spake well, having respect to the commandment. What therefore is it that he says that we should hold fast to them that fear the Lord, with those who meditate on the command of the word which they have received in their heart, with those that declare the righteous judgments of the Lord and keep his commandments." In short, with those who know that to meditate is a work of pleasure, and therefore ruminate, which is the ruminant system of a clean animal, which all they do is digest it and bring it back up, and digest it and bring it back up. Cows have 4 stomachs, sheep, goats have 2 stomachs, okay? It's all to do with the knowledge given and digesting it and bringing it back to memory and digesting it again. This is what he's saying here, okay? Meditate. Remember, go into that upper room, right? Close your eyes in darkness and let God come into your mind. Meditate on his word. Take no thought, right? This is all here from the Epistle of Barnabas. All the things that I have been explaining through the Spirit to you. All right? To meditate is the work of pleasure, and therefore ruminate upon in the word of the Lord. Okay? Ruminate on it. A ruminant animal. Okay? It means just continue digesting what he is telling you. "But why might they eat those that clave the hoof," or claven hoof? "Because now listen to this. This is very incredible. Here's the cloven hoof. Here's the cloven hoof. All right? I want you to look at this. But why might they eat those that cloven the hoof? Because the righteous live in this present world, but his expectation is fixed upon the other. See, brethren, how admirable Moses' commands were. Is this not what we have been saying? How the left and right hemisphere of the brain, the left and right hemisphere of the mind, the lower consciousness and the lower mind, the higher consciousness and the higher mind, the upper room, the furnished room. You can see it in the cloven hoof. The left-hand side of the brain and the right-hand side of the brain. The left-hand side of the brain and the right-hand side of the brain. This is just a fun example of showing you that you're without excuse. The left-hand lower carnal mind, living in the present world, only caring about the present things, only caring about what he has to do today and tomorrow, how he can fill up his flesh, how he can, have all these ideas that he's going to do in his life, and I got to do this, and I got to do that, and oh, I'm planning this, and I'm planning that, and oh, I got to do this, and the gardening, and this, and blah, 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 blah. Versus the right hemisphere, which is what? The righteous that lives in this present world, though we're not from it, but are fixed upon the other world, or the higher mind, or the higher consciousness, or the God's consciousness, or Christ's consciousness, or the life after this consciousness, the greater consciousness, not the carnal consciousness, not fill up your boots consciousness. He tells you right here, right in the cloven hoof, the representation of the cloven hoof of a sheep, of a goat, of a cow. It's remarkable. But how should we thus know all this and understand it? We therefore, understanding aright the commandments, speak as the Lord would have us. Wherefore he has circumcised our ears and our hearts, that we may know these things. How incredible this epistle actually is for those that have eyes and ears and study the Bible. There is nothing in this epistle that is made up or forged or not real or is a complete lie. Because I'm going to tell you this and I'm going to tell you this again. If that is the case, then the Bible you read is the same. Get the Epistle of Barnabas and read it. Because if you understand the Torah and you understand the Old Testament and you understand who Christ actually is and where he actually dwells, you will then understand that this epistle is probably the greatest epistle that was ever given. Because it unveils and confirms all things spirit. And how about this? I'm still in shock about this. Where is this teaching in school? Oh, man. It's incredible. Teaching of the transgenders of this world today that we're living in. And the complete abomination of the time frame that we're living in. Being ruled and being in the land of hyenas and owls and wild beasts and jackals and sea monsters that are controlling everything that we do. It's right here for you. Right here. I hope you got something from this. I'll probably do more teachings from this because I find it remarkable. And as I continue to go through this book, and as I read more of the books that within it, and I'm sure, as I said, I've only gotten through probably 4 or 5 books already. I haven't had this book long, but rest assured I'm going to continue to read this right on through to the end, and I'll read this book probably 20 times. But that's all I have. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.